The woods that sang. When I was 18, in the spring of 2020, the world fractured. COVID-19 had just begun its quiet conquest, and San Antonio, like everywhere else, felt like a ghost town. Schools closed, businesses shuttered, and the streets emptied, but my friends and I treated the lockdown like a dare. While others binge-watched Netflix or baked sourdough, we roamed the hollowed-out city, chasing the adrenaline of abandoned places. Storm drains, crumbling factories, graveyards at midnight, I'd seen it all. Fear was a language I thought I'd mastered. That is, until O.P. Schnabel Park rewrote the rules. The park was a paradox. By day, families hiked its sun-dappled trails, children squealing as they fed ducks in the creek. By night, it became something else. Locals called it the Throat, a place that swallowed secrets. In 2016, Lauren Bump's murder stained its reputation. In 2021, a teenager was shot there after dark. Police barricaded the entrances at sunset, but the gates were laughably easy to bypass. A rusted chain, a kicked-in fence panel, the park invited the reckless. Clarissa wasn't reckless. She was quiet, the kind of girl who sat in the back of chemistry class doodling constellations in her notebook. We'd barely spoken before the pandemic, but isolation breeds strange alliances. When I asked her to explore O.P. Schnabel at 3 a.m., I expected a polite refusal. Instead, she said yes. Maybe she was bored. Maybe she wanted to prove something, to me, to herself. Or maybe the same quiet madness that gripped me had seeped into her, too. The descent. We parked my truck at a gravel pull-off, its headlights carving tunnels in the darkness before I killed the engine. The silence was immediate, total. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the weight of the woods pressing in. Clarissa hesitated, her hand lingering on the door handle. "You sure about this?" she asked. I grinned, all false bravado. "Where's your sense of adventure?" We didn't use flashlights. I never did. Darkness, I'd learned, is a language. Let your eyes adjust, and the world reveals itself in gradients of shadow. The moon was a skeletal sliver, its light smothered by the live oaks. Clarissa stuck close, her shoulder brushing mine as we followed the main trail. The air smelled of damp earth and something sharper, ozone, maybe, or the metallic tang of impending rain. Every snap of a twig made her flinch. "Raccoons," I said, though I wasn't sure. After 20 minutes, I pointed to a gap in the trees. "This trail loops back to the truck." "Faster." She nodded, her face pale as moth wings. The off-road path was a jagged scar in the undergrowth, barely wide enough for one person. Branches clawed at our clothes, and the air grew colder, denser, as if we'd stepped into a freezer. Clarissa's breaths came quicker. "It's like the trees are watching," she whispered. Then the flute began to play. The music. It started as a single, trembling note, a sound so pure it froze us mid-step. Then another note joined, weaving into a melody that was equal parts lullaby and lament. My mind raced. A recording? A phone left behind? But the music felt alive, shifting and swelling as if guided by invisible hands. Clarissa's grip on my arm tightened. "What is that?" she hissed. The sound defied logic. One moment, it echoed from the direction of the main trail. The next, it buzzed inside my skull like a trapped fly. The melody quickened, a feverish jig-like rhythm that made my pulse spike. Clarissa's prayers spilled out in a frantic whisper. "Hail Mary, full of grace, please, please, make it stop." Her fear was contagious. I'd never seen her like this, cheeks wet, lips trembling, her usual quiet resolve unraveling. "Run," I said. Not a suggestion. A command. The chase. We sprinted, our shoes skidding on moss-slick roots. The flute faded behind us, but the woods retaliated. To our left, something huge crashed through the brush, a force that shook the ground. I caught a flash of movement, a shadow darker than the night, rippling like oil on water. No eyes, no shape, just a presence that sucked the air from my lungs. Clarissa screamed, and we veered back toward the main trail. But the flute was waiting. It started again, louder now, the notes spiraling into a cacophony that felt like needles in my ears. The melody twisted into something manic, mocking, as if the forest itself were laughing. Clarissa stumbled, her knees scraping rock, but I yanked her upright. "Don't look back," I shouted, though every instinct screamed to do just that. We passed a porta-potty, its plastic walls glowing faintly in the gloom. A human silhouette seemed to flicker behind the door. Had it always been there? But we didn't stop. The truck materialized ahead, a hulking shadow in the dark. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them. Clarissa snatched them up, her tears glinting in the dashlights as the engine roared to life. The aftermath. The next morning, I scoured the internet. O.P. Schnabel's forums were a graveyard of urban legends. Phantom figures in colonial garb, cults performing moonlit rituals, even a shape-shifting stag demon blamed for Lauren Bump's murder. But a flute. Only one thread, buried in a Reddit rabbit hole, mentioned church bells and choir music near the creek in 2018. The user deleted their account days later. Clarissa refused to speak about it. When I pressed her, she'd shut down, her eyes going distant as if staring into a memory she couldn't escape. We stopped talking altogether by summer. I told myself it was the pandemic, the chaos of graduation, but deep down, I knew. I'd shown her a crack in the world, one she couldn't unsee. The unanswered. Years later, I still hunt for answers. Was it a homeless musician, lost to psychosis? A viral TikTok prankster? Or something older, something that predated the park itself? I've read about Pied Pipers in folklore, entities that lure the unwary with music. In German legends, they steal children. In Navajo stories, they're skinwalkers, mimicking human sounds to hunt. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I replay the melody in my head. It's still there, note perfect, as if my mind recorded it. I've hummed it to musicians, music teachers, even a composer friend. None recognize it. It's not a known piece, one said, but it's structured, like a requiem. The threshold. I still explore. Abandoned places are my church, my addiction. But I avoid O.P. Schnabel. Not out of fear, though fear is part of it, but out of respect. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. And whatever lives in those woods, it doesn't just want to be heard. It wants to be remembered.